Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Wonderful. I just want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. My name is Vedna Haywood, and I am the chair for No Place for Hate. So No Place for Hate is a town committee, and as a town committee, the No Place for Hate pledges to uphold our town's guiding principles. We are a community that is inclusive, collaborative, and promotes diversity, recognizing that we are different and that is healthy and productive. No Place for Hate is a committee that's existed here in the town for over 20 years. We're a committee of 16 people with 2 seats specifically for youth, and we meet on the second Thursday of every month. We partner with several town services and organizations, one being the League, which is here tonight with us. And we are a part of a larger coalition within the South Shore, representing other social justice groups. We actually have a table back there, so just for any information regarding No Place for Hate, you can join us. We do several programs throughout the year, and if you feel so inclined to donate, there's also an opportunity to do so too. So thank you.
I'd like to thank you also from the League of Women Voters for coming here tonight. In 2019, the League of Women Voters at their convention established a policy of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They vowed in this policy to look at all issues through the lens of DEI. This policy was adopted by our Massachusetts League of Women Voters and then by the League of Women Voters of Plymouth. At that time, we at the League in Plymouth created a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee of our own, and I'm chair of that. And for the past 4 years, we've done forums in conjunction with No Place for Hate, and we have done them at the town hall, very well attended, and you can see them on PlymouthLWV.org, our website. And we have had, we just had a change of heart, and we decided that we'd do something a little more fun this year. Thanks to the brilliance of Evelyn Strawn, who found these gentlemen that we're going to see tonight, and Bob Hollis for his generosity and enthusiasm at the Spire. So we can't thank them enough for making this happen. Like Vedna said, if you're interested in learning more about the League of Women Voters, we're out there, and we certainly are happy to have new members, men and women. So we are the League of Men and Women Voters. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. We're very excited to host this event this evening. Hi, everyone. My name's Caitlin. I'm the executive director here at the Spire Center. I want to take a moment to thank our proud sponsors of this evening, including Crayon College, Hollis Agency, No Place for Hate, as well as the League of Women Voters. We're very, very pleased to have such support from the community. If you'll bear with me just a moment, please take note of your fire exits. I have to do my due diligence. Fire exits, restrooms over in the corner, 2 additional downstairs. The lovely and talented Joanne is on bar this evening. She will acquiesce to any reasonable request. If you are going to drink, please drink responsibly. Please stay hydrated. Allow me to please take a moment to tell you a little bit about the fantastic artists that we have the pleasure of hosting here tonight. Reggie Harris is an award-winning songwriter, storyteller, and lecturer who has entertained and educated audiences of all ages for over 40 years. He is currently serving as Director of Music Education for the UU Living Legacy Project, through which he leads pilgrimages to civil rights landmarks throughout the South. Alistair Mook is a Grammy-nominated family musician, a social justice and songwriting educator for all ages, and co-founder of the Opening Doors Project, an anti-racist music organization. Like his boyhood hero, Woody Guthrie, he believes in the power of music to reach all people, young and old, far and wide, for all occasions. Please join me in welcoming Reggie Harris and Alistair Mook presenting Race and Song.
Of course. I thank you. You got my back.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
It is our pleasure. Well, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Oh, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. There will be food. There will be for food. All at the welcome table. Food for all at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. Food for all at the welcome table. Food for all at the welcome table one of these days. You know that we're gonna sit and eat together. We're gonna sit and eat together one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sit and eat together. We're gonna sit and eat together one of these days. Well, you know that I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Well, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hey, I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to sit at the welcome table. That's one of the songs that I was surrounded by in my childhood, sitting in the Nazarene Baptist Church at Nice and Lycoming Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yeah, somebody said, all right. That's what my mother would say. She sat about right there, about the fifth row or so, and in that amazing building, surrounded by folks who had been part of the Black migration. My family was part of that. My grandmom and grandfather came north from Virginia like 6 million other African Americans who were fleeing the South. And they brought with them their stories, which they almost never told. And they brought with them their songs, which they always sang. And they brought with them the sense that they needed to gather in churches and sing the songs that had brought them out of slavery, brought their ancestors out of slavery, and passed them on to their children. So I was one of those, shall we say, unappreciative children who sat in the pew with my mom early on before I got permission to go up into the balcony. That was about age 11. And so I would sit in the pew with her, and that gave her the opportunity to, when I was fidgeting, because those old folks used to take forever to sing those songs. And she would pinch me and say, "Shut up." But years later, I thanked her for getting me into that building to hear those songs. And what we're doing here tonight is really, in some ways, recalling what we were both given in our childhoods and what we have gathered as we've come along. And the welcome table, those folks were singing because they were not sitting at the welcome table yet. They were singing into the future that they hoped would be part of their lives. And because of them, well, we can do what we do. Thank you so much for coming to Race and Song, a conversation.
Yeah. Well, my family had a much more firm seat at that table. My dad's family certainly did. They are WASPs. That's what you would call my dad's family, WASPs from New Jersey. Grew up outside New York and New Jersey. And my mom's family is a Jewish family. And, you know, we Americans all have our relationship to that welcome table, right? And one of the places that we lose each other is in the competition about where we sit around that table. One of the things that I've learned and thought more carefully about in the last few years is that it's okay to pay attention to one thing at a time. We don't have to do everything at the same time. One of the issues with white liberalism, I think, is that the feeling that we want to solve everything at once and it needs to happen right now. And what we often don't notice about ourselves is that when you put everything in the same bucket and say, let's have an organization that does LGBTQ work and that looks at religious intolerance and race and every other form of oppression and discrimination, that the tendency among my people is that race always ends up at the end of the line. Do you know? Race is usually not as closely intersected with our families. We don't intermarry to the same degree. We don't end up having kids that are LGBTQ like I do, right? That nobody's ever had a black child by mistake, right? This is a specific part of the American story, but when you lift one boat, all boats rise. And so I've put a lot of my time and energy in the last several years to focus on race work, and even more specifically, focused on the relationship between white and black American experiences. Because I think that if we can make progress in this one small area, we can lift everything up. The amazing thing about anti-racism work is that it's much more internal than I ever realized. You know, when I started getting more involved, it felt very much outward. Like, this will be about what do I do with my Saturdays and how do I spend this number of hours. And a good friend of mine, Dan Zanes, is a family musician, used to be here in Boston, part of the Del Fuegos. Dan's been doing anti-racism work for years, and we spent a lot of time on the phone. It was important for me to talk to another white, straight dude, but with much better hair. And one of the first things Dan said to me was, you know, this is internal work. You're going to have to let loose of a whole lot of things that we're taught and unteach yourself. And it requires you to re-examine your relationships to all kinds of things, gender and sexuality, orientation. So here's a song of mine which maybe ties some of those themes together and does exactly the opposite of what I just said. I thought we should all be doing by putting everything into one big bucket. But one of the things that both Reggie and I do is we go out and we spend a lot of time with kids in schools. And it's kids of all ages, little, upper elementary, middle school, high school. Reggie and I have done several colleges together now. Literally, we've done graduated living places for 80, 90s, and 100 years olds. So we are really hitting every age range. And one of the things that I wanted to bring to kids was a message about how movements for change learn from each other and inspire each other. So this is a song of mine called Be a Pain, which was inspired in turn by the words of John Lewis, who told anybody who would ever listen to cause good trouble. Not bad trouble, good trouble. So here's Be a Pain. If you see something that's wrong, raise your hand to say that's wrong. Point it out and name that thing by its name. Don't stand by and stare. If it's wrong, it's your affair. Don't be quiet, make a riot, be a pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd, go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. When Rosa Parks sat on that bus, she chose to make a fuss. She chose to break the rules and take the blame. Her choice to sit and fight helped to bring on civil rights, because one strong woman chose to be a pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. When they say you have to move, say I'll remain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Harvey Milk, he chose to run for the council board and won, even though folks said you can't because you're gay. One brave LGBTQ elected leader ran and knew you can change things if you choose to be a pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. Tell 'em I won't let you make me feel ashamed. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. A tennis star named Billie Jean told the world she had a dream that men and women would be paid the same. She refused to hit that ball till there was equal pay for all. She was a king because she was a royal pain. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. If they refuse to pay, refuse to play the game. Don't be polite, raise your voice. Don't be polite, raise your voice. Do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Kids from Parkland led the fight for something they all knew was right. They said it's time for us to finally make a change. If adults can't compromise, we must go march for our lives. They spoke out and led the charge. They all were pains. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. When you're faced with laws you know are just insane. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Sing if you got it. Be a pain, be a pain. Shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd, go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, 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 be a pain. Thank you.
Saw some folks get brave there and sort of jump in. Good for you. I'd actually, well, we'd like to invite you on to be even braver. So I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you or near you and look them into the face, give them a smile, and say with as much enthusiasm as you can muster, I can't wait to hear you sing. Uh-huh. Yeah, I know.
That got him going.
Well, Alistair was talking about, working on a number of things, working on a number of issues, and certainly from the very beginning, from before our nation was a country, there were folks who were already looking at the lives of others, and there were folks who were saying, they were seeing that there were issues that didn't particularly affect them in a direct way, but they were already beginning to, in their nature, get active. And certainly one of those early movements was the Underground Railroad. Such a remarkable movement of people of different races and different colors, different economic backgrounds, people who got out of their comfort zone, many of them, at a time when the nation was just kind of figuring out what its real mission was. Of course, we know it was founded on the principles of freedom, and yet we had 2 and then 3 and then 4 million people in slavery. And some of those early folks, the abolitionists, and certainly we are in an amazing historical place. It's a really remarkable thing to be here in Plymouth and to know that in this area and in Boston and certainly in where I came from in Philadelphia, many of those early movements for freedom and justice were founded. And I love the fact that they also really relied on song. People who found themselves in slavery certainly came with that culture, that cultural connection to song. And they were joined by others who were willing to sing songs or listen to them and be inspired by them. And one of those songs is one that I sang growing up. The song says, "Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Ah, yeah, wade in the water. God's going to trouble the water." I didn't know growing up in my church that this was a song that was part of the Underground Railroad, and that people would actually sing this song as they made their journey to freedom, as they made their escape. It's such a powerful song, and the fact of the matter is that those African Americans who came up with this spiritual sorrow song, as Frederick Douglass called it, actually got the inspiration from people who had lived about 2,000 years before they were dealing with slavery. Jews in Egypt who were faced with the same problem of being in bondage and who wrote down their stories. And when my ancestors heard them talk about walking out of Egypt and getting to the Red Sea, when they heard about a man named Moses who went before a powerful leader and said, "Let my people go." When my ancestors heard that story, it was a light bulb moment for them. And they turned it into this song. Now, we're going to do this song together. And all you have to do, if you choose to join us in this song, is do the response to our call. I'll be your griot for the moment. I'll be the song leader. And I'll sing something like, "Well, now, who are those children all dressed in red?" You say, "God's gonna trouble the water." Call and response. You know it. So, I'm gonna ask you not to look at the person next to you. You might stop them from using that beautiful voice. You might want to kind of loosen yourself up a little bit, just kind of get your mojo working here. And let's just try that first verse, and then we'll sing through this song and see what happens. Well, who were those children all dressed in red?
God's gonna trouble the water.
They must be the ones that Moses led.
God's gonna trouble the water.
Ah, that wasn't bad. Got some voices out here.
Somebody was singing harmony.
I know. My
This is
goodness.
Advanced audience participation.
Let's try the second verse. Well, now, who were those children all dressed in white?
God's gonna trouble the water.
They must be the ones getting ready to fly.
God's gonna trouble the water.
You know, this is getting better and better. I do have to tell you all that you are singing rather politely. It's a cultural thing, I'm sure, but you know, I'm going to ask you to dirty it up a little bit. Don't be so correct. Hey, put a little growl in your voice, you know. We're talking about making an escape, people. Gonna have to get into the mud here. Well, now, who were those children all are dressed in red? Yeah, they must be the ones that Moses led.
God's gonna trouble the water.
Hey, who are those children all are dressed in white?
God's gonna trouble the water.
They must be the ones getting ready to fly.
God's gonna trouble the water.
Here we go. Say, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the. Sing it over. Say, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. Say,
God's gonna trouble the water.
well, who are those children all are dressed in blue?
God's gonna trouble the water.
They must be the ones that made it through. Well, who are those children all are dressed in black?
God's gonna trouble the water.
They never, 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 never. No, never, 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 no, 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 never, 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 no, never, no, never, no, never, no. They're just not going back. 'Cause why would they? Oh, they're walking to freedom. Let's play it, say. If you don't believe you can be set free, say,
God's gonna trouble the water.
well, it's up to you and it's up to me.
God's gonna trouble the water.
Well, if you don't think you can be redeemed,
God's gonna trouble the water.
say, follow me down to the Jordan stream. God's gonna trouble. Take out your hands, say, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. Say, God's gonna trouble the water. They wade in the water. Wade, oh, children, say, wade in the water. You know, God's gonna trouble the. Sing that again. Say, God's gonna trouble the. Sing it over. God's gonna trouble the. God's gonna trouble the water. Children, say, God's gonna trouble the. Last time, say, God's gonna trouble the water. Give yourselves a hand. Y'all are all right.
Oh, nice job, everybody.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So people always ask us how we met, and we met quite a while ago. Reggie knew my wife before I did.
I knew her when she was, I think, 10 years old.
Yeah. and I was about the same age, and we weren't married yet. So Reggie met my wife through her mother, who booked Kim and Reggie to come perform at their school in Connecticut. And then they became friends, and over the years, Kim and Reggie would come through and stay at their house, something which many years later still, we're both surfing couches still, doesn't end.
Yeah, still
Not
staying.
in our line of work. And then Jane went off to college and brought home a handsome guy. And then she dropped that guy and brought me home to meet everybody. And I met Kim and Reggie at that point, and we started talking and building a relationship. And it was a very polite relationship, you know. Most interracial relationships in America are polite. We talk about sports, we talk about
The
jobs.
weather, yeah.
Weather, sure. We talk about everything other than race because it's so uncomfortable. And especially for us white folks who don't get a lot of opportunity to practice, because it's not something we do a lot in our homes, right? People talk about privilege. That word gets thrown around a lot in America. But one of the great privileges of being white in America is that you don't have to talk about race. You don't have to think about it because it doesn't affect and rule our daily lives. Or at least we don't realize the ways in which it does. Which makes it hard because it makes us beginners. And when we stumble into a conversation about race, interracially, we don't have a lot of skills or practice. And for a lot of black and brown people in America who've had more practice than they would choose, it's exhausting, right? When the latest tragedy happens, the latest unarmed black victim is killed in a raid or a shooting, a traffic pullover, people start calling up their black friends and want to talk about it. And it's tiring. It was around the time that George Floyd was murdered that you were getting a whole lot of phone calls from a whole
My
lot of
phone
people.
was ringing, 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 ringing.
How were you feeling at that moment?
I was feeling very weary. I mean, this is the work I've chosen to do, that I feel called to do. I've been doing this in schools and across the nation with adult groups. And so this is a conversation I have often. And usually a lot of these conversations that I have are with people. I mean, I'm so grateful to the organizations that are sponsoring us tonight. Because many of the organizations that sponsor the work that I do across the year are not focusing on race or history. They're not having these conversations, and certainly many of you have been. So for me, that conversation is often with people who are just coming into the realization, the awareness that there is a problem. And certainly, even though I tell people, and people say, well, did you all talk about this growing up? Well, in my black community growing up, we were living it. And so it wasn't really discussed in this way. It's a different conversation. But for most of my year, I'm kind of working to introduce people in a way that they can process this, because it's, as you know, it's a big subject. So when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Elijah McClain and all of those cataclysmic events happened, I was getting a lot of calls and emails from people who knew that I do this work, and they suddenly had a great desire to discuss how they were feeling and what they were finding out. And while on the one hand I was more than willing to have those conversations, I was also just kind of overwhelmed. So when Alistair sent me an email and said that he wanted to know if I would be willing to have some conversations, you can imagine, and I thought, well, I know he's a good guy. I also knew that Alistair was doing a lot of work on social justice in schools, so I figured it wouldn't be racism 101. And fortunately, of course, when we finally got to talk, it wasn't. Alistair came to the conversation with a lot of information and had begun to process not only the information from outside, but the internal information, and our conversation started at a really a much deeper place than many that I was having. I actually, at one point, for most people who were contacting me, I just kind of told them I'm not available. I'm taking some time off. But we began to have a conversation, and the one thing I said to Alistair was, I'm willing to have these conversations, but I'm not putting together a new show. Well, here we are.
I think one of the secrets of success was that we had enough trust between us over the years of our friendship that we knew something about each other, so it wasn't reaching out blind to somebody. I also came to those conversations with a lot of specific things that I wanted to talk about. It wasn't, how do I process this? Because I had been doing that work. It was more about some new interracial work that I was doing in the music world, specifically around family music. I had helped form a racial justice equity group in family music, which I think sometimes surprises people because children's musicians are nice people. They are. Among all the genres, children's musicians are nice. But it's actually a perfect lens to look at how to work on race in America because niceness is often the last bastion, right, of barrier. That niceness is what often keeps us from progressing. And the very nice people in the children's music world were replicating the same outcomes over and over again, which was that people who look like me, especially white guys with acoustic guitars, were winning all the big awards, and people who didn't look like me weren't. And that was during conversations about diversity and inclusion, a lot of conversations, and yet we kept getting the same results. So a group came together that was predominantly black and brown, and that I fell into and was lucky to be able to. And we started working on these issues in ways that I was learning things at a very fast clip. I'd never worked so closely with peers of color before. And I learned a new kind of intentionality about how to do work like this, to think deeper than sort of the first level, to dig a little further. I had thrown out the brilliant idea after George Floyd into the children's music world. Let's do a fundraising concert for Black Lives Matter, which is often how we try to solve problems, right? And someone smarter than me said, after 50 people raised their hands and said, yeah, great, I want to do it, somebody said, you know, having 50 people, most of whom are white, raising money for Black Lives Matter doesn't seem to honor the real intentionality behind that group. It's not centering black people. It's sort of putting a lot of white people out front and putting their brands on something and saying, we're gonna fix it. So some people could have been angry about that. Instead, very generously, some folks of color in my world reached out to me and said, you know, we've been talking about putting together a festival of all black musicians, which has never happened before in the children's music space. What do you think about working with us and supporting what we're trying to do? And that's how this new organization called Family Music Forward started. And we put together 2 festivals of all black musicians. First, all black musicians, and then all black women musicians. And I was learning fast. You know, all of us were learning together. We thought we need a publicist for this. Well, the only publicists in children's music were white. And we could have gone with one of them and we could have connected the dots and they would have been eager to help. But folks said, no, let's back up and let's take some extra time and see if we can find a black publicist who works in an adjacent field in publicity. And we did. And the festival made the New York Times and all kinds of things. And so with each step, we were kind of learning how to do this in a more thoughtful way. And of course, once you start to do that, you can't unlearn those things. You start to put it into practice in your life, or at least you have that opportunity. So these were the things Reggie and I were talking about. How can we replicate this work in some other fields like folk music, et cetera, et cetera? So we'll come back to that story, I suppose, and we'll take some questions from you all later. But Reggie and I have a tendency to forget that we're musicians sometimes, so we'll get back to the music part of the program.
We love to talk.
This is a song I wrote several years ago, You know, I've been thinking about these kinds of issues for a long time, but the way I've thought about them is continually changing. And one of the things I always say to kids is that if we're doing our jobs as people, we don't stop learning when we leave school. Learning is a lifetime pursuit. And it's usually right at the moment that we're convinced we've got it figured out that we start to get things wrong. This was a song inspired by a book called Cloud Splitter, written by Russell Banks, who just died this year. A Massachusetts boy. Spent a lot of his growing up in the town next to mine. He lived in Stoneham, Massachusetts. And Russell Banks wrote thoughtfully about class and race, American intersections. Cloud Splitter was a fiction. It's a work of fiction. It's a novel, but it's based all on true stories about a real American. And as I read the book, I started to think about putting it into song. I think what inspires me about this individual is not the actions that he took, because murdering a lot of people is not always the best way for progress. Sometimes it has its place, I suppose, but it's not necessarily something we want to replicate on a regular basis, right? But what does inspire me about this man is that he looked at America's deepest problem and he saw himself in it, and he came to the realization that this was his problem as much as it was anybody else's, and that he had work to do. A father farmer far out in the hills, rich in family, poor in dollar bills, struggling with the call of heaven's host, fighting off the demons and the ghosts. Heard a cry from far off in the south. He turned his gaze away from his own house, found the battle he was born to fight, took his sons and left that very night. The current conflict raging in the west, Lawrence, Kansas next to face the test. The father and the sons come overland. Within a year there's blood on all their hands. Every man's affected when he kills. Death's a mighty bitter tasting pill. But John Brown heard the whisper in his ear, now bring to the South what you've done here. Yeah, Cloud Splitter, open up the skies. Make this country open up its eyes. Well, Cloud Splitter, what's it gonna take? How's a nation fix a great mistake? October 16th, 1859. 21 men waiting for his sign to cross the wide Potomac to a shore where slavery's hold was cold as it was shore. Harper's Ferry fell without a fight, and 60 prisoners taken on the night. A fully loaded federal armory, but no slaves came to claim the weaponry. By next day's end, the army shot them down. They captured some, including old John Brown. Dragged them to a local court in chains, where 2 months later, all of them was hanged. On the stand, John Brown addressed the court, his right hand on the Bible for support. Remember, those in bonds is bound with them. I'm bound by laws of God, not laws of men. Yeah, Cloud Splitter, open up the sky. Make this country open up its eyes. Yes, Cloud Splitter, what's it gonna take? as a nation fix a great mistake. Within 2 years, the Civil War had begun. Many reasons, John Brown being one. And though Abe Lincoln never did intend, he finished what Brown started in the end. Washington is on my dollar bill, and Jefferson's memorial on the hill. John Brown gave his life for our great sin. The textbooks almost never mention him. Racial fear still fuels this nation's fire. The smoke is thick and noise getting high. And up in heaven, John Brown sits and cries. Come back, John, open up our eyes. Yeah, cloud splitter, open up the skies. Make this country open up its eyes. Well, cloud splitter, what's it gonna take? As a nation fix a great mistake. Yeah, cloud splitter, open up the sky. Make this country open up its eyes. Thank you.
We need more light about each other. For light brings understanding. Understanding brings love. Love brings patience. And patience brings unity. First time I heard that quote, I went looking for it, expecting that I would find that it was a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And I was mildly surprised to discover that it's a quote from Malcolm X. Malcolm X, who is usually portrayed from those places in his life of confrontation, of anger, of by every means necessary. But the fact of the matter is that for his entire life, through all of those troubled phases and searches, Malcolm X was always really about seeking light. And he found it actually on his journey to Mecca, after he had left the Nation of Islam and traveled to Mecca to deepen his Muslim faith. And saw Muslims coming from all around the world who, different races, different nationalities, different colors. He saw that it wasn't in confrontation, that it was in light and love, and it shifted something inside of him. And he came back to the United States and sought out Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., with whom he'd had a rather strained relationship. And the two of them, in a brief conversation, pledged to work together and to work on many issues. Unfortunately, of course, both of them were murdered not long after that conversation. But the light that both of them left just really factored into a reality that we think sometimes that legislation and telling people facts will shift them enough to change their minds. That's what I thought when I went for my first anti-racism training. I found a group called the National Coalition Building Institute, and they were offering a anti-racism, anti-prejudice, reducing prejudice, it was called. And I went thinking that they were going to give me all kinds of skills so I could go out and change the world. And very quickly, they told those of us gathered there that they weren't interested in teaching us how to change people's minds because you can't change people's minds. They said, we want to help you to understand and to learn, first of all, how to work from inside to change and to understand where you are, and then to work in the world to create an atmosphere of people listening to each other, hearing each other, and not even necessarily coming up with answers on what you hear. And that was the first monumental change in my work and my attitude about creating a beloved community. It wasn't about changing people because if people are faced with a relationship and a story, hearing their own story juxtaposed against the stories of others, many times they will change. It's about opening up their eyes and their hearts. We sit alone together, each from our different world, suspicious of each other, position flags unfurled. So much lies broken between us, lines of connection now, standing in ruins of pain and mistrust, searching for common ground. So we stumble through our points of view, logic falls apart. In that moment of confusion, we see a place to start. Through the windows of the heart. We sit in silence and wonder, where do we go from here? Frustration dragging us under, no resolutions clear. We feel the anger, this desperation to turn this world around. Each of our faces a mirror, searching for common ground. So we lower our defenses, watch them fall apart. In that moment of confusion, we see a place to start. Through the windows of the heart. that moment of communion, we see a place to start through the windows of the heart. Thank you.
Should we do one more and take some questions from these
Yeah,
folks?
why don't we do that? These good folks were kind enough to come out tonight. It'd be nice to hear some of what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Both of us share an appreciation for elders and you're welcome. One of the elders that we share in our connection base was Pete Seeger, who was a wonderful friend and mentor and an amazing songwriter and song leader. Pete had an amazing, incredible way of passing on ideas, but one thing that he was absolutely dedicated to was getting people singing. And he wrote all kinds of songs that, for that purpose. They took them around the world and introduced people to each other, to the concept that we can not only sing together, but we can live together with the prospect of taking care of not only each other, but also our great planet. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping on our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow rays. It's too soon to die. Try that with us. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping on our shore,
One ocean
lapping on our shore, one earth so green and round, one earth so green and round. Who could ask for more? Who could ask for more? And because I love you, and because I love you, I'll give it one more try
I'll give it one more try
to show my rainbow race, to show my rainbow race. It's too soon to die.
It's too soon to die.
Some folks want to be like an ostrich, bury their heads down in the sand. Some folks hope that plastic dreams can unclench all those greedy hands. Some folks want to take the easy way, poisons and bombs, they think we need them. Don't you know you can't kill all the unbelievers? There's no shortcut to freedom. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping on our shore, one earth so green and round. One earth so green and round. Who could ask for more? Who could ask for more? And because I love you,
And because I love you,
I'll give it one more try.
I'll give it one more try.
To show my rainbow race,
To show my rainbow.
it's too soon to die.
It's too soon to die.
Go tell all the little children, tell mothers and fathers too. Now's our last chance to learn and share what's been given to me and you. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shore. One earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race. It's too soon to die. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping on our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more?
Nice singing, everybody. So we would love to hear from you. Would have some questions or things you want to share. Yeah, look at these lights are coming up. Thanks, Woody.
Yeah.
It's like magic. What a beautiful performing arts center you guys have here. You're very lucky. This is a special place. I hope
Truly, truly is.
you get to enjoy it.
So if you have a thought or a question or a reflection, something that's come up for you as we've been singing and talking, just raise your hand and we'll be calling on you. We realize that we are now going from sin to receive.
Come get uncomfortable with us. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. A friend of mine who lives Jamaica Plain, and her church wanted to do some diversity work, and they made contact with an organization, and they said we'll be happy to work with you as a all black organization and an all white church, and they said we at this point we have 5 trainers, but only one of them at this point feels able to go out and work with white people. So we'll put you on the list, and as soon as she gets free, we'll put you all together. And my friend, who has done this work over the years on her own, And she went back to the church folks, and she said, well, they have one trainer who at this point can do that. It's a lot to absorb, and it's very hard to process because, I also do a lot of civil rights pilgrimages. I work with an organization called the Living Legacy Project, and what we do is we take people, mostly white people, on 5 to 8 day pilgrimages to the South to visit churches and museums and sites of the civil rights movement. And along the way, we hire some of the folks who are in those communities who have been at this work. We have people who were on the Bloody Sunday at 9 years old or 11 years old and have been working all these years. And we bring folks in, and they come in and they share their stories. And they've been sharing their stories for 60 years. And in many cases in their communities, seeing very, very little progress. But in the hope that there would be progress, they've been telling those stories. And from time to time, we always check in with them and we say, we appreciate that you are willing to share your story. But we also want to ask you, are you feeling that, what can we do to help you? Because every time they tell that story, I will tell you, they may be telling that story a number of times over the years, and in the middle of those stories, they will just break down from the pain that they have absorbed over the years. They want to share that story, but you can just see in the moment, a story that they have told hundreds of times still hurts. So, the work is very, very difficult, and the healing sometimes is very slow.
I'm glad we started there. I think and I'm glad you said it, and said it concisely, because it's something that white folks often don't want to speak, but it can be confusing, right? You want to be helpful, and somebody comes to your organization or your group and they say, I'm exhausted, or I'm not looking for a friend. And it's confusing stimulus, and it can be hurtful. It can feel like a slap. I think what we have such a hard time internalizing, because it's so central, is the amount of weight that Black Americans carry, that Black women carry more than Black men, that Black gay women carry more than Black women. It adds up, and people are only human. I think the thing that trips most of us white folks up more than anything is the feelings, right? We get hurt or we get embarrassed, and then we recoil. And whether we intend it or not, we end up making it about how we feel. And there's a place for that, because we're only human too. But there's a good place for it, which is working with other white folks to get through some of that beginner or that early phase of what to do with my feelings. There are some fantastic groups in this state. If we talk later, I'd be happy to direct you to some of them. One of them, Dan Zanes, who I mentioned, helped create. It's called Critical White Conversations. And it's a space for white folks to come and talk about how they're feeling and the struggle and the frustrations that come with trying to do anti-racism work. And part of the work of the folks who help run that organization is to take some of that burden off of our Black brothers and sisters and put it on ourselves and say, let's make this a safe space for us to have a conversation, so that when you go back and you have an opportunity to work with folks of color on racial issues, you can put some of your own feelings to the side. It's okay for someone to say, I'm having a really hard time. And it's not about you, it's about them. And it doesn't mean that you can't be in the fight. It just means that there's a human part of this, right? And this is what I mean about the internal stuff. What I have found with that is that it has forced me, despite my best efforts, to be much more understanding towards other people, especially and including other white people, right? And also my wife. When you meet somebody and you have a hard interaction, we all know this, we all tell each other this, it's not necessarily about you, right? That person could be having a really hard day or week or year or life. And when we make it about our interaction, we end up putting it all on a lens on ourselves. And when we're able to be empathetic and say, maybe this is about them, and I'm going to go over here now, right? The most important thing that I have been learning over the last several years is how to be wrong and how to make mistakes. And it's really hard. It's really hard for men, especially. We are taught not to make mistakes. And when we do, to double down on what we said, right? We have
See a
some
little bit of
wonderful
that in the world.
examples. We have some wonderful examples.
We
Some of them
really
are
do.
running for president right now. If you're wrong, you double down and you go extra hard on it. It's much harder to say, maybe I was wrong. When the woman in that thread called me out and said, maybe this isn't the best way to proceed, all of my lifelong learning said, defend yourself, attack, say, no, you didn't understand what I meant, right? But she did understand what I meant. And in fact, she was right and I was wrong. But I didn't know it until I learned it. And because, for whatever grace of God moment, I had an opportunity. In that moment, I did something that I have normally not always done in my life, which was to say, you know what, I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm going to listen. And I will talk to her and listen to what she has to say. And when I did, I learned that she was right. There was a better way to do what I was hoping to do, and it doesn't mean my intentions weren't good, they were. But there was a better way forward, and listening is how you get there.
And thank you again for sharing that.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Oh, there's a
great.
mic.
Here
Over
it
here,
comes,
over here.
over here.
Do it
We
for
have-
do it for the greater good.
We know. Sometimes we don't have very receptive ears.
Hi. So I wanted to thank you for that song, first of all, about Be a Pain, because I have 3 biracial daughters who I have always raised to have a voice, and now that's kind of coming back on me, because in a beautiful way, right? Because in our house, every day I hear my husband or I, will be having a conversation, and it's, Mama, that's racist. Daddy, that's sexist. Mama, that's, and I'm like, oh. So, but it has me constantly, so yay for the youth of America, but it has me constantly looking at, because my first thought was, but I'm a good person, and I've always been an advocate, and I've always, but I really had to take a look at what I say and how I say things, and quite honestly, sometimes I walk out of the room and have to think about that for a minute and then come back and kind of realize it because, how wonderful for them. And also in our family, after I can't remember what particular incident, but I was ready to take to the streets and put the Black Lives Matter sign in the yard and do all these things, but I quickly realized I had to take a back seat and kind of let my husband and my children lead our family's action through that, because what I would do, I could do behind a shield of safety. And the consensus in our household from them was, please don't put that sign in the yard. We do not want attention drawn. We just, we'll speak out in our own way. And even coming here tonight, I was like, girls, let's go to this great thing, diversity. Isn't it wonderful? And they were like, ugh. And I realized, thank you also for that, I realized it was, we deal with this shit every day. We don't want to necessarily come and talk about it all the time, right? And even though I think their voice in this situation is more important than mine, I have more to learn from it. They obviously live it and know it. So for all of those things, thank you so much for being
It
here.
seems like you're doing a great job.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sure.
presentation we did all the time. Okay, just saying how grateful I am to be here and how wonderful hearing that first song and as a pastor. And after the George Floyd, after the murder and all that, one of the things that we realized in my church and in all the churches is that white people need to do their own work. And of course, the same thing happened, you know, the couple of clergy of color kept getting calls, you know, and like, oh, come in and will you do a presentation at our church so we can learn how to be, you know, not be so white. And I found in my church right around the time was that there were really great, we realized that the white people needed to get together and do their own work. And we started out doing really easy work like, doing book studies on waking up white. Like, let's kind of move, that's the gentle, and then white fragility. Oh, that was a little harder. And then how to be an anti-racist. Okay, so
Harder
kind
still.
of harder still. And and I ended up leaving the situation and am in another situation, but, there was a commitment to continue, and I hope that at some point, like the way you two got together and you had done your work, because I think we need to kind of come into building relationships from an equal place of self-awareness. And that's what you all did. So I really appreciate that. And I have children, and my children, like racist, sexist, my kids say, that was a microaggression.
I have two 16-year-olds. I hear it a lot.
Yeah. Mine are older, but I mean, so just so great. And I know the denomination that I serve, we do a lot of work around this work. Such a gift to be here tonight.
Thank you.
You said such an important thing. I just want to pick up something you said about building relationships from an equal place of trust. And a big piece of that is meeting people, right? One of the things that I've learned a lot about myself and about how white folks often do their instinct about diversity and inclusion is to say we have an open door. Our doors are open. Everyone's welcome. And nobody comes in the door, and then people sit and scratch, but our door is open, and we have a sign that says everyone's welcome. Why didn't they come? But it doesn't generally occur to us that we have to go out to where other people are, right? And meet them where they are. And risk, this is the hard part, risk rejection. Somebody saying, no thanks, I don't have time, I'm not interested in having that conversation. But it's only when we reach outside of our comfort zones. And a lot of what Reggie and I do within our own field, and I think everybody here has their space. Whatever it is, your church, your workplace, there are spaces in your community that you can be doing your piece of work, and that finding that niche is really important. Well, we've been doing a lot of stuff in the folk music world. I've been doing a lot in my home venue of Club Passim up in Cambridge, Mass. And I've been part of a new group called the Folk Collective, which is a diversity equity group. And a very thoughtful, smart woman named Shay Rose helped lead it. And she was brought in as a DEI consultant. And the first thing she said was, I can't do this myself. I want to put together a collective, an interracial collective. And because there aren't a lot of black and brown people who've made this place their home over the years, we're going to have to bring in people that aren't here. So I'm going to work through my networks and see who might be interested. And we have this fantastic group that's been working all year. But one of the things we talk about a lot is how we get past just opening the door and going out and finding people where they are. And changing expectations too. This group has put together now some hip hop shows at Club Passim, the Folk Bastion in Cambridge, where Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, but it's also where Mississippi John Hurt and every great black musician in the 1960s played. And hip hop is the folk tradition now, and bringing in people doing really amazing, thoughtful people's work, right? And doing it and willing to do it on that stage. I'm starting to see that club move forward in a new way, and it's exciting. What's going on with you, Reg? You've got 10 million things you're always doing.
I was just thinking, one of the things every January, the group that I say I work with, but I joined them, the Living Legacy Project, in 2010 for one trip to be the musician on board, to do some of the songs of the Civil Rights Movement, to fill in the history of how song was used in Civil Rights Movement. I thought I was going to do one trip in October of 2010, and not only am I still with them, but I got elected co-president. One more thing. But what we've been doing over the last few years is really trying to tag into colleges. And we had a really great partner that sort of helped us to begin that work with a college in Rochester, New York, Nazareth College. The campus minister there heard that I was doing this work and called up and said, you know, we take trips over to Germany and Poland to take our students to the Holocaust sites, and we go to the down below the border, you know, in Mexico, and we take people on an immigrant and a immigration trip. And we don't have a trip where our students can really experience and learn the lessons of the Civil Rights Movement. So we've been doing that for the last 5 years with them and now with some other campuses. And I remember that on the second one of those journeys, they work very hard to put together a student group that is very diverse in as many ways as they can. And it usually numbers about 20, 25 students. And they get on the bus. We do 9 days, starting in Birmingham, Alabama, going through, you know, Montgomery, Marion, Selma. And then in Selma, we stop and they do 2 days of in-service with the sisters, the nuns, the Sisters of St. Joseph, and at the a center there in Selma. And that's also about the 4th day. And by that time, they've seen some of the imaging at the museums. They've heard some of the stories of the Civil Rights Movement. Things begin to really percolate. And we hit Selma, and Selma being absolutely and thoroughly black and poor, a lot begins to come out. So our students were divvied up. They went all over Selma and you know, in the area, and they saw what life was like there. And we started to hear from the leaders from Nazareth, the campus minister, and one of the other faculty that was with them. They said the students are starting to get a little agitated by some of these things, and I think if you all are willing, we might need to split them up. Take the students of color and take them, and if you'd be willing to take them and just kind of hear what's going on with them, and we'll take the white students, and we'll do the same with them. And so we did. We announced, it was kind of an unplanned thing, but we announced that we were going to have these sessions that afternoon, and we separated them out, and we took the students of color. And so I met with them, and my colleagues who took the white students said, for the entire time that they were working with them, they were saying, why do we have to be separated? Why? What are they doing over there? Yeah, we hear them laughing. Why are they laughing? You know. And my students, first they looked at me and they said, you really want us to share what we're feeling? And I said, yeah, I really do. And after about 5 minutes, they began to sort of, you know, be very honest about their reflections. And at one point, they just kind of were saying, you know, they were thinking about the things that happened to them back on the campus, which is a mostly white campus in Rochester. And they began to talk about the microaggressions and some of the macroaggressions that they experience, all sorts of amazing things, but things that we would expect on a college campus in 2023. And so at one point, they were kind of getting really riled up, and I had to say to them, look, the experience that you all are having is not the experience that the white students are having. And they said, we know that. And I said, okay, fine. So you have to understand, they put themselves on this bus. They volunteered to come here, and they're having an experience, and they don't understand what it is you're feeling. And they erupted at me, and they said, they know. And I said, no, they really don't. And they said, yes, they do. And it took about 20 minutes of talking. I just let them go, you know. And I said, you know, so where would they know? Where would they pick up what it is you're feeling? You all are from Brooklyn. You're from Harlem. You're from, you know, Detroit. What is it you think they know about your experience? And slowly but surely they began to understand that and unpack what it was they were seeing, because they were reacting to 350 years of imaging, and also being in the middle of Selma, just really registering for them. And then we got both of the groups back together, and that was a amazing trip. But it was so powerful because they were honest, and they began to understand that they could say what they were feeling. They took that back to camp. And one of the things I love about working with that campus, and we're doing that at other campuses as well, they go back to school with the idea that it's not just a trip. This is meant to be a pilgrimage where you open yourself up to transformation. And when they go back to campus, they have to have further meetings, and then they have to come up with a project that will reflect what it is they learned as they went through the entire trip. And they keep journals. And this year's group actually ended up on TV in Rochester. And they are continuing, as the year comes to an end, to initiate some programs in lower schools and also in the Rochester area. But it really is that coming alive that happens for us if we are willing to open ourselves and feel the pain of our awareness really becoming more acute.
And it's messy.
It's very messy.
never
It's
not
messy work.
messy.
No. And it's hard to exist in the middle of that messiness,
We
which
don't
is
like
also
messes.
why we need to be kind to ourselves and each other. And everyone in this work cannot be kind. That's another thing we have to remember. There are sometimes, as in any work, I know in the work that I've done across the years of trying to become a more aware man and friend to my female friends, to my gay friends, to deal with all of the misinformation and the enculturation that exists in me that sometimes I'm not aware of how it comes out. To be willing in that moment to have somebody call me on something and not immediately say, but I didn't mean to hurt you. Well, I didn't mean to, but I did. So, yeah, it's messy. That's also why we have music.
Music's helpful. Should we do one more song? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Is this on? Can
Yes.
you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to share a visceral experience that happened to me in 1968. I was a public health nurse in my 20s in East Hartford, Connecticut, an all-black and Puerto Rican area, and I actually had an interpreter with me on all my. Oh, thanks. Do you want me to repeat it, or you heard it? Okay. And I was quite visibly pregnant, and we'd wear our public health uniforms and felt very, very safe. And then Martin Luther King was assassinated. And we were not allowed to go out for 2 weeks. And when we went back, we could just feel the pain of the neighborhood. But there was no one talked about it with us. And as I share this with you now, I can feel that pain again. And I could understand it. I could accept how they felt. I really could. So that's all. That was just an experience that probably changed my life.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
If there's one takeaway from tonight, it's that this is uncomfortable work and it's painful work. We have had 350 years of slavery followed by 100 years of segregation and 60 years since then. And so many of us want this to be over and dusted with and done. It doesn't work that way. You can't do something this wrong for 450 years and then expect it to be done in a generation. One of the most powerful things, I think, for kids when we go into schools is for kids to learn in a visceral way that Reggie, excuse me for outing you at the age of 70, is experienced the segregation that they learn about in textbooks in his own life, right? The this and that, the most blatant form of racism in America, the separation of people. That's my parents' generation. Many of you here lived through it. But to our kids, it's ancient history. They see black and white photos. It might have been hundreds of years ago as far as they understand. And to an amazing degree, a lot of American adults seem to think this all happened a lot longer ago than it did too. It's gonna take us a long time to undo this. So we need to dig in and get patient and be willing to be uncomfortable. And we're not gonna solve it tomorrow, but it takes these conversations and showing up and doing your own work in your own place. That's how we move forward.
When I tell them that I met Rosa Parks, yeah, and they look at me and they say, "Did you know Harriet Tubman too?"
On that note, will you sing one more with us? Well, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Yes, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Don't you know that the light that shines is the light of love? It lights up the darkness from above. Shines on me, shines on you. It shows what the power of love can do. I'm gonna shine my light far and near. I'm gonna shine my light so bright and clear. Where there's a dark corner in this land, I'm gonna let my little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Yeah, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. If you want, you can clap on the backbeat with Reggie or the one in the three with me. Just pick your cultural institution, whatever you need to do. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, 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 let it shine. One more time. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the No Place for Hate Committee for bringing us in, everybody.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. That took a lot longer to say at the end than I thought.
Thank you. Back there. Thank you.